Whakaromalahi atu, welcome to a special edition of Talanoa Sa'o. I'm Eli Tikile.
Talofalava, my name is Leah Tilsley.
Ia matoi whātalofa atu pa ia mana mamalu nei afiafi. Ia o tatou pokalame masani nei o le Talanoa Sa'o po le Straight Talk. And this evening we have a special guest. His name is Awhionga Misa Telefoni Tunganga Le Sa Matawa Nu'u Retzlaff. And so I'm going to have him just introduce himself just momentarily.
Ia, vea ne avanoe mo le toi le whaftaitele I le malo whafonganga Samoa I on tupu mono mo na whailaunga tōwhia. Ma lovlea I atu muampule I tu au maratau a ingal tai ma le wa au fonti. Ia wofa malo mo nei aso ma le nei avanoe whaatalanoe na ai le tusi le nei o le Tautua o lo maua le SSAP I Mangere 141 Beta Road.
Tight. And right now, as you all know, we can't start our program unless we have our lotu first. So hand it over to your sister here.
Dear Lord, I just want to thank you so much for the privilege of being able to be here, to be with my brothers here. And I thank you for our special guest. I pray blessing and favor over him and his amazing book that we're about to talk about today. We ask that you be with us, help us to speak what we need to be spoken. And we ask you, God, for your blessing and favor over it all. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so did you guys have anything that you wanted to contribute just before we start?
Yeah, I want to say happy Samoa Language Week.
Yes. And actually, to go even further than that, today is actually Independence Day in Samoa.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
So it's happy Samoa Independence Day in Samoa. Yeah.
Yes.
How many
It's
years?
a wonderful
59 years, I believe?
62.
62,
we
yeah.
were independent.
Yeah, wow. 1962, we were independent. That's right. So it's actually Independence Day in Samoa, but also in the United States, today is Memorial Day. So happy Memorial Day to all our family over there. So having said that, I just wanted to start out by saying welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to come on and to speak to our audience. I wanted to mention the fact that I was one of the very lucky guests. I was invited to the book launch Saturday night. It was the book launch for Tautua, The Memoirs of a Public Servant, written by our guest tonight. And there were about 300 people present. And I noticed that your keynote speaker of the evening was Judith Collins, who happens to be the leader of the National Party as well as the opposition to the current administration. And I wanted to ask you something because I also noticed someone was absent that evening who happened to be the elected MP for the Mangere electorate, which is where we had this launch at. Can you speak to that?
Well, I was very honored when the Honorable Judith Collins agreed to keynote my evening, my launch. As you know, the two most important men in Judith Collins' life, her husband David Wantan and her son James Wantan, are both Samoans.
Yes.
So you saw that I started off by making them stand up and introduce
That's
them
right.
as Samoans.
That's right.
And I feel in my own mind that Judith Collins has not been given a fair run by the media. I think that they keep using that, even when it's totally unrelated, they keep using that tape of her kneeling in the Anglican Church.
Yeah.
And of course, all the insinuations that come with that. I don't know why they don't just stop playing it. I'm just going to say to the media now, when you talk about Judith Collins in future, just stop playing that particular clip, because she was invited into the church and she chose to kneel and say a little prayer. That's her choice as a human being.
Yeah.
And I think she deserves that. About the night, I thought she gave a wonderful speech.
Yes.
She's posted it very widely.
Yeah.
She's obviously, she felt the alofa, I think, within the hall. You felt it?
Yes.
I felt
definitely.
the alofa for two things. I felt the alofa for this book.
Yes.
I felt the alofa for me.
Yeah.
And I have to say I felt the alofa for Judith Collins.
That's right.
You are perhaps being a little unfair on the Honorable Aupito because I did invite him and I sent him a book. But he did tender his apologies, and he said, unfortunately, he had another previous engagement. But people should know that I would always balance the books when it comes to inviting people.
Definitely.
But it was a great night. It was a great night, I think, because the focus was more on this book,
Yeah.
which is as much about me, my father, his story. My favorite chapters are 2 and 14.
Yeah.
2, because it's the chapter that tells about my special relationship with my father.
Yes.
And I would never have entered politics, I don't believe, if he had lived a much longer life, because he hated politics.
Yeah.
So his passing enabled an opportunity for me to get into politics.
Right.
But, as a Samoan son, I had 2 qualifications, and I would never go against my father's wishes.
Right.
That's who we are. We're Samoans. And I remember when I was at Auckland University, we always used to sit at the back of the bus, because we were always the guys that felt compelled to stand up when old people came into the bus and give up our seats for them. And I think, people talk about being Samoans and then they get a little carried away with definitions. Are you New Zealand born? Are you Samoan born? I don't think you're Samoan by where you're born. You're Samoan by your behavior.
Yes.
Wow.
You go out there and show your culture. You carry it on your sleeve.
That's right.
And if you answer your parents back, you're not a Samoan. I'm sorry about it. This is the kind of stuff that's very important. If you read chapter 2 in here,
Yes.
you'll know what I mean. Chapter 14, again, I had just written the chapter on the tsunami,
Yes.
and people have told me that it's very hard rendering.
Yeah.
I loved writing observer articles.
Yeah.
So what happened here is that the tsunami struck, and about 5 days later was my article in the Observer.
Right.
And it was very poignant. It was very strong in my heart.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful article. So all I did really is I thought, well, why write something new?
Yeah.
I repeated the article that I wrote in the Observer back in 2009, a few days after the tsunami actually struck.
Right.
So then I wanted something different.
Yeah.
So I thought, what do I write now? So that's why I named chapter 14, He Restores My Soul, because I'm a big fan of the 23rd Psalm.
Yes.
And the only difference is apologies to King David. I say he restores me mind, body, and soul.
Yes.
Yeah, so I add my own little variation to the psalm.
Yes.
And I think I've heard that King David's okay with it.
Yeah.
But
he told
he's okay with my little changes.
Right.
But yeah, so I wanted to write about this Catholic Carmelite nun.
Yes, and before you continue, I actually wanted to get into that. So I wanted to just let you know that as I read this book, one of the things that really struck me was how personal it felt. How you must have really poured your heart and soul into writing this, because there were parts here that are very, very personal. Chapter 2, as you mentioned, that has to do with your father. But before we get into all that, because in our culture, as you all know, we are very, very strong Christian people. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your Christian faith, and maybe this can be a segue into that. So if you'd like to share with us just a little bit about what it is that you believe as a Christian believer.
Well, I was born a Methodist.
Yes.
All the Ta'isis are Methodist.
That's right.
Those people who have read Tautai will know that my grandfather had a Methodist church.
Yeah.
And I refer in here with great pride to how the current Tuiatua, who is also our Ta'isi,
Yes.
gifted that land just recently. I think a few weeks ago to the Methodist Church.
To the church. That's
And
right.
that's very, very good, because that gives certainty to the church.
That's
because
right.
we don't know who the next owner of Tuefu will be.
That's right.
So we basically are Methodists. I was baptized a Methodist.
Yes.
When I came to King's College, I was confirmed an Anglican.
That's right.
And most of my friends, believe it or not, the people I'm closest to are Catholics.
Yes.
Now, this Catholic nun Tautua, he was head of state at the time. Taisi, my cousin. He's my first cousin. His mother and my mother were sisters. I've got a picture of them all in here.
Right.
So he came to my granddaughter's first birthday.
Yes.
He's my daughter Erica's godfather, and he sent for me.
Yeah.
He said, no, we just spent the morning at the Carmelite nunnery.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. He was sort of being skeptical.
Yes.
Like he didn't know why this Catholic nun kept talking about me, wanted to meet me.
Yes.
And he said, her name is Sister Mary of St. John.
Yeah.
She talks about nothing but you, and she'd like to meet you, and it's her birthday tomorrow.
Mm.
So I'd heard. He wasn't the first Catholic to come and tell me that.
Yeah.
I'd had Komisi Chang Mao and a few other prominent Catholics had come up to me at functions.
Yeah.
Just said, look, there's a Carmelite nun up in the nunnery who keeps talking about you.
So if you don't mind, I'd just like to interject real quickly. For those who aren't familiar with this, there's a monastery out there in Samoa where the Manu Samoa always go to that monastery before they head out to play any international games. And it's known as the Carmelite nuns. And so he's referring to Sister Mary, who happened to be one of the nuns in that monastery.
Yes. So they're not allowed to meet people.
Yes.
If you go there, there's a thing that you turn, a turnpike. So if you have a gift for them or food for them, you put it on the turnpike and turned it, and then they collect it at the other end.
Yes.
So this is how difficult it is. But I went up there and said that I'd like to do the fafanga for her birthday because I found out it was the next day.
Yes.
And that's when the relationship started. And we became very close. So every year on her birthday, I'd take gifts for her, and she'd bake a cake for Rihanna, my granddaughter, because they're about 3 days apart, their birthdays. And so the relationship developed. And when she passed away, only 2 people were allowed to go in to the Carmelite, to the back where the burial grounds are.
Right.
And one of them was me. But I asked the Mother Superior if I could do her tombstone.
Yes.
And it was a great honor when she said yes, but she said it has to be exactly the same size as all the other 8. So the practice of the Carmelites is that the nuns are buried in the country they serve in.
Yes.
And where they pass away. So we had an unveiling, and Tautua said the prayer.
Yes.
And it was the most wonderful thing. We were allowed in, and that's why these photographs, when Catholics see them, they cringe because they say to themselves, what are these people doing with all these Carmelite nuns?
Right.
We even came after the unveiling and sat down and had lunch. And the nuns were telling these stories. They said, well, Sister Mary would come and bring lemons, because they had a big lemon tree, and say, someone take these to Misa. And we'd be very embarrassed. So they admitted to me that they did a white lie. They'd say, yes, we'll take it, and then they never brought me the lemon. But the most touching story, which I relate in here, is the groundsman.
Yes.
So he came up to me and he said, Misa, it was funny. We were getting ready to take her to hospital, because I was here. I wasn't there at the time.
You were in New Zealand.
I was in New Zealand at the time when she got ill, and she had to go to hospital. So they were getting her ready, and they were about to put her into the car.
Yes.
And she said to him, I need my umbrella. I need my umbrella.
Not because it was raining.
There was no rain, but he said to her, sister, you're not going to need an umbrella. You're going to go straight into the room, straight into your bed, and you don't need the umbrella. And Sister Mary said, no, Misa, that's from Misa. I have to take that umbrella with me to the hospital. Wow. So the umbrella was next to her. We found out that she's from the McIntyre family in Arrowtown, so we tried to track them down.
Yeah.
She came from a family of 11. She passed away at 93 years of age. And it's kind of special. Every time I'm going through any kind of a challenge, I always see her as my prayer warrior up there. And it's very, 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 very dear to me. So these are the sorts of stories that I write about. And if I do one more story.
Yeah.
So this is the time when I'm Minister of Shipping.
Yeah.
My first portfolio, Tofi Lau appointed me. Tofi Lau was Prime Minister at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm appointed Minister of Shipping, which means ex officio. I'm chairman of the Samoa Shipping Corporation. So I go to my first board meeting, and I find my brother Tui's on the board.
Yes.
and that's my brother Tui from Savaii, that all the Samoans know because he has the bakery, he has the shop, and a real hard case. He always considered me a bit of a nerd. So Tui's big mission in life was to get my nerdy brother to get into a little bit of mischief and all that kind of stuff. But here's the funny thing about the board. So I just, at those days I was new to cabinet and I was a little self-righteous. And I said to my poor brother after, can I talk to you? So I said to Tui, Tui, I think it's not a good look. How about you resign from the board? I said, having two brothers on the same board to me is not a good look. So he looked at me real funny and he said, listen, little brother, Tofilau put me on this board and only Tofilau can remove me. So you resign. So I thought, okay. I've been put in my place. He is about 12 years older than me, and I'm not going to argue with my brother, not when he's in that mood. Yeah. So it's funny because then I still felt the need to go and see the Prime Minister. So I was seeing him on something else, and I said, Prime Minister, I said, Tofilau, because I was speaking Samoan, I said, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with me and Tui being on the same board. So
conflict of interest.
Tofilau looked at me incredulously and he said, Misa, and every Samoan will appreciate these words.
Yes.
He said, Ole mele na o te whaingoina, o le whamaoni whavalvalea.
That's right.
Whamaoni whavalvalea. Now, don't ask me to translate whamaoni whavalvalea. But it kind of means that you're being a sanctimonious, self-righteous, and you're really out of order. So the upshot of the story was we served 5 wonderful years together on the same board. Not one complaint from the media or anybody else. It was just me and my delicate feelings about what was right but he put me in my place. He said, Whamaoni is righteousness. But Whavalvalea means, stupid righteousness. So it's a great classic phrase, and hopefully that phrase, if there are any Whaiwheaus listening, that's a good phrase to use when because I know for a fact that there are times when people come and the Whaiwheau has a favorite tiakono and they want to expel him. And he doesn't want him expelled because he's so dear to him and he does so much work. So maybe, they can make the excuse and say it's Maoni Whavalvalea and we'll give him a second chance. Second chance.
Well, I like that phrase. I want to keep that one.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was going to say that it kind of reminds me of, because I can kind of see where you were coming from, kind of like a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Or maybe even nepotism. That's what it kind of smacks of. But then, of course, Tofilau, our dear Prime Minister, who rest in peace. He had some interesting words. He had some great wisdom. There are great lines that I'm familiar with that he said.
Just following up very quickly on that, 2 things. One, when he chose me to go and be ringside at Whamuina To'alatai's World Title Challenge, I wasn't Minister of Sports.
Yeah.
It was a Sunday night. My children were, first time he'd ever visited my home. Yeah. My children came up, it was about 7 o'clock, and they said, the Prime Minister's downstairs.
So do you mind if I just backtrack real quick?
Yeah.
So Whamuina To'alatai actually is David Tua. Those are his chief titles, Whamuina and To'alatai.
Thank you. So he came and said, I'd like you to go as the official government rep to ringside in the Mandalay Bay to
Las Vegas
to watch and support David Tua. This is very important. This is the first Samoan to challenge for the heavyweight title of the world.
That's right.
So I was, ringside, and I talk about it in the book.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there was a very important meeting, because as you know, SPREP is headquartered in Samoa.
Yes.
So in my first year as a minister, I was Minister of Agriculture. The key SPREP meeting that will determine whether the office stays in Samoa was about to be held.
Yeah.
So Tofilau sent for me and he said, look, I know, Misa, you're not Minister of Environment, but you need to chair this meeting. So I said, well, okay, but it's a bit sensitive to the... He said, don't worry, we'll send him to New Zealand on some errand and you can you can chair the meeting.
I like it.
Well, the upshot of it is, to be fair to everyone, because he was not bitter at all. He was quite happy that I was chairing that meeting because it was all legal issues.
Yes.
And I suppose Tofilau thought that my being a lawyer, I could deal with it. One of them was Tahiti. Tahiti were very self-conscious about the fact that the French wanted them to be the big shot
Yes.
in this treaty,
Yes.
and not them as a French territory. So we had to find a compromise around that,
Yes.
which we did. We found a compromise, and SPREP is still there. It's worth millions to Samoa that it's there.
Yes.
So I guess being sent to David Tour when you're not Minister of Sports and put into this, so I came to be known a little bit as the old man's favorite.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say, because you were saying about it.
Yeah.
He was very careful to cover it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of sensed it, because there was a few times when I was really out of line.
Yeah.
And when the attacks started coming from the other ministers, Tofilau would just decide that he wanted to stop.
Yeah.
So he'd say, okay, stop it. Misa has apologized. That's enough. Let's get on with it.
So, just for those who are unfamiliar with Samoa's chronological government history, the current or the caretaker prime minister of Samoa, who is in the news right now, Tuilaepa Sailele Maliele Ngaoi, he was actually the deputy prime minister for the prime minister that we're discussing, Tofilau Eti Alesana. Yeah, so when we talk about Tofilau Eti Alesana, this man is a very he's an icon in Samoa. One thing about that he also did that I'm very sure you're familiar with is the saying that if it's good for Apia, it's good for the rest of Samoa. Yeah.
Yes. And when I was Minister of Health, I had a little saying. I was referred to by all the doctors as the man from Falealupo, and I'm not from Falealupo.
Right.
It's just that we spend about 5 million tala, and we still do, sending patients to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And those referrals are life-saving.
Yeah.
So, of course, you know what our people are like with their parents.
Yes.
So if there's any chance they can be saved, they'll be heavy on government. Please send my father, please send my mother to New Zealand.
Yes.
So occasionally when they come to me with these referrals, because the Minister of Health is the only way you go into cabinet with these.
Yes.
They come to me, I look at them, I see it's a prominent business person or a prominent politician. I'll just look at these guys and I'll say, yeah, I see this person. If he was a man from Falealupo, would we be still sending him?
Yes.
So the word got around all the doctors, and then they started referring to me. They said, be very careful. You've got to take it to the man from Falealupo. And all that meant was, he's going to say, if this was just an ordinary person in the street, would he be going to New Zealand and would be spending all this money on it?
That's right.
Because to me, it just had to be clinical. The decision has to be clinical.
Yeah.
And it's the same with scholarships.
Yeah.
The marks talk.
That's right.
So you can come up and tell me you're a minister's son or you're a minister's daughter, and I'll tell you, you get the marks or you don't get the scholarship.
That's right.
Nice. Yeah,
That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it doesn't work that way, it's debilitating.
That's right.
So you get children who are trying their best,
Yes.
and they don't get scholarships only because the word is fat cat.
Yes.
Some fat cat has come and gotten the scholarship, not on the merits.
Fat cat. I've never heard of that one.
But you know what usually happens for Yava?
Yes.
To be fair, they fail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can take a person and thrust him into something, but if he hasn't got the capabilities, he's not going to succeed.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's better to let the person get in on his merits, because then he would have earned the position, and it's like when they did the quotas here in the system.
Yeah.
So they got people in the quota,
Yeah.
and the only thing I used to ask those days, and this is very relevant to our Samoan community here.
Yes.
So I always used to ask the question, if the Samoan quota is 10,
Yeah.
and 10 Samoans get in on their merits,
Yes.
there was one time when they used to say, we don't need the quota. And I would always be arguing, no, the quota is for those Samoans who couldn't get in.
That's right.
So if 10 Samoans get in on their merits,
Yeah.
that's there.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
So
in the quota.
if you're going to say that a quota is going to work, then the quota has to be people who just missed out.
That's right.
And then they have the right to step up.
Yeah.
But then they found that, especially Auckland University Law School, they gave them tutors. So then there was funding for tutors. Because they realized the point we were just talking about. You can get a person in there,
Yes.
but if they're not good enough, they're not going to pass.
Yeah. It'll be a waste of time.
A bit of waste of time. But the quota thing, I think they've overcome that hurdle now of saying that, there's already 10 Samoans there, so we don't need the quota. Then it's not a quota.
I just wanted to just inform everyone here that you are a very educated person, and your education, for the most part, came from New Zealand. You're a former King's College boarder. This was back in 1965. You entered into Auckland University Law School in 1970. You were admitted to the New Zealand Bar in 1974, where you graduated with a Bachelor of Law honors. And this was when you were at 21 years old. Is that correct?
Yes, I was only 21 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
So, it's what really happened there is that I graduated on the 8th of May and I didn't turn 22 until the 21st of May. So I could say that I graduated when I was only 21.
Oh, okay.
When I asked the university, has any 20-year-old ever graduated LLB honors? They've never answered me properly, but I understand that none have. So I guess it's a bit of a record. Now, I've been told that other people have equaled it, but that it's never been beaten. But it was quite, it was quite interesting because when I was invited back to Auckland University to give that lecture, that lecture that I referred to.
It's inside the book.
I was set an assignment by Dr. Northey in my last year.
Yes.
And he had a debate raging with an academic in Otago called Dr. Jim Farmer.
Yes.
And he set the assignment deliberately on their conflict.
Wow.
Expecting that most of his students would go for him.
Yeah.
So he got quite upset when my assignment went for Dr. Farmer.
Yeah.
And he sat me down and let me know in no uncertain terms that he was displeased.
Yes.
And I said, well, I'm very sorry, Dr. Northey, but you set the assignment. I've done my research. I've done my work. And I'm sorry, but I side with Dr. Farmer. So I was kind of persona non grata. I don't know what. I think the real problem with me then is that I wasn't a politician. I should have just done what he did, and maybe he would have given me a Rhodes Scholar or something like that. I don't know. Well, I don't know what the costs of it to me, but I had two of my favorite professors in the front row.
Yes.
I had Professor Bernard Brown, who was my criminal law professor, and I had Jock Brookfield, who was my constitutional law professor.
Yes.
So when I got up, it was a 6 o'clock start.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit flippant. I said, I'm so touched that two of my favorite professors have chosen to come and listen to me rather than go and watch the 6 o'clock news. and when Bernard Brown got up, because he's a fierce intellect, I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. What is he going to ask me? So he got up at question time. He said, no, I'm only here to tell you, young man, that there's more to our lives than the 6 o'clock news.
Touche.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's more to our lives than the 6 o'clock news.
Yes.
And that was just so exciting for me because I thought, well, okay.
So you just basically came full circle in that particular moment. I also wanted to bring up the fact that we so far have just mentioned some Samoan icons, but you actually are connected with someone who is considered to be a New Zealand icon as well. Can you tell us a little bit of how you happened to meet Sir Edmund Hillary?
Yes. Mark Goshe, Vui Mark Goshe.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize his father's Samoan and that he spoke Samoan.
Yes.
Vui was close friend of David Longy.
Yes.
So when David Longy passed away, he rang me in Samoa. I was DPM at the time, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, and he said, will you come and give a eulogy? Yes. So I said, very flattered. I went to Cabinet, they agreed, I came up. So when I arrived, they used a marquee at Mount Smart Stadium. So Vui came out and met me, and he said, only you three are on the stage. There's you, Sir Edmund Hillary, and Helen Clark.
Wow.
And the family. So we had the coffin here. We had the three of us here. So I was sitting next to Sir Edmund.
Wow.
And my first job when I got out of law school was as a law clerk at a firm called Jackson Russell, which has just celebrated 175 years.
Wow.
It's one of the oldest law firms in New Zealand.
Yes.
And the senior partner was Jim Rose. And in 1974, Jim Rose and I did a lot of things together because I was the junior and he was the senior, and apparently there are things that you do. I mentioned it in the book. And his daughter and granddaughter are the two people who sadly died in that plane crash.
Yes.
So now remember, this is 1975. This is 2005. The thing for David Longy. So I'm sitting next to Sir Edmund, and I make myself known to him, and I told him how honored I was to be sitting next to him. And I mentioned Jim Rose. And he teared up. So this great man, 30 years after the event, was still moved to tears by thinking about his wife and daughter dying in this plane crash, because apparently he was supposed to travel with them.
Ah.
So in the last minute, the Sherpas convinced Sir Edmund to stay and do something else.
Yeah.
But he got up because apparently when David Longy became Prime Minister, there were no relations with India.
Yeah.
And he was passionate about India. He loved India.
Yes.
So he rang Sir Edmund.
Yeah.
And Sir Edmund didn't even know he was Prime Minister. So the conversation went that he rang and he said, Sir Edmund Hillary. And he said, yes. He says, I'm David Longy. And he said, oh, yes, yes. You may not have heard, I'm now the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I would like you to go and be ambassador to India.
Right.
And he was.
Wow.
He was. He went and became ambassador to India. And then they reopened diplomatic relations with India. And of course, he was, very popular. He was already doing wonderful work with the Sherpas.
Yes.
And he's just a wonderful, wonderful human being. But that's the experience I had. But I got up. I want to mention this. I got up, and in the front row was Sir Barry Curtis, Len Brown, Gilbert Ulrich, all these Otahu College old boys.
Otahu.
Otahu College. So I got up and I said, Otahu College, here is your Prime Minister. Now, I didn't get a standing ovation by saying that. I'll tell you what I said that got me the only standing ovation at David Longy's funeral.
Yeah.
I said, Otahu College, you have done what King's College has never done. Produced a Prime Minister of New Zealand. Up they went. all of them, up like this. And I thought to myself, see, you're not up because you produced a Prime Minister, you're up because you beat King Stewart. And the fact of the matter is, it's true, King's College has only produced a Deputy Prime Minister, Jim Macleay.
Yes.
They've never produced a Prime. But I got told off by this guy, and I tell the story, who said to me, have I forgotten Sir Tom Davis? And I looked at him and I said, yes, but Sir Tom Davis was Prime Minister of the Cook Islands. He wasn't Prime Minister of New Zealand, of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And he looked at me and said, well, that's still a Prime Minister. You didn't realize I was in the audience and they gave me a hard time about it. He said, all these Otahu College guys came up to me and said, see, Misa just said that you haven't been able to produce a Prime Minister of New Zealand yet.
There you go. There you go.
That's why I've got a subtitle under the King's chapter, Otahu College's Prime Minister.
That's right. That's right.
I wanted to drum home the point.
Yeah. And in your political life, you've been the Deputy Prime Minister of Samoa for 10 years. And you were the Deputy Prime Minister prior to Fiame Naomi Mataafa. Is that correct?
Well, I always make it very clear to people that I was never appointed Deputy Prime Minister of Samoa.
Yes.
I was appointed Deputy Leader of the HRPP.
Okay.
And as Deputy Leader of the HRPP, when the HRPP is in power, I am automatically Deputy Prime Minister.
Right.
And that's why I mentioned in the book that I sent a text to my good friend Kelvin Davis.
Yeah.
When he wasn't Deputy. It was different before because they didn't have the numbers.
Yes.
But this time Labour could rule alone.
Yes.
So I sent him a text and I said, Kelvin, can you explain how you can be Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and you're not automatically Deputy Prime Minister of the country?
Right.
Well, I think he quite rightly didn't respond. I don't really blame him. But I did send it. But it's very significant because, that was what I was appointed. Now, the interesting thing too is we call it the Whakasa voting system.
Yes.
So Prime Ministers, you all have a say around the table. Yes, we support Tulepa. He's now the leader. He's done a good job. We just won a resounding election, and he gets back. But when it comes to the deputy leader, you write down your nominee.
Yes.
So there are no nominations.
Yes.
So sometimes people are scared to write their name down in case there are not too many people will vote for them. But I won the election both times, 2001, 2006. So for 10 years, I was Deputy Prime Minister, and then I retired in 2011.
I wanted to, we're running short on time now. So before we wrap things up, I wanted to see if we could just bring up that
Painting?
that thing behind here.
Okay.
Yes, just because you have a very, very interesting background in terms of your family, and
Thank you.
if we could just bring this out here.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
There are people who are so familiar with this song. This is Samoan Language Week, and I have to tell you that this song right here is a song that everyone learns in order to understand Samoan.
Everyone.
And so,
Everyone.
could you just speak to that?
Yes. Well, my mother composed Tautalatala in 1950.
Okay.
And the Thule brothers did a recording of her music in Sydney, Australia in 1954. And we have that recording on her page.
Yes.
It's the first time this song was recorded. It was a jingle to her.
Yes.
She had songs like Farewell Samoa, South Sea Island Dream, It's Only a Memory. These are songs that, she felt were the major song. And there was a very important song called Can't You See I'm Sorry,
Right.
which I always tell people if my father hadn't accepted that apology, I wouldn't be here because they'd had a very big falling out.
Yes.
And so she wrote this song, and there's lines in it that people are getting wrong. It says, Loto watinga tele ia te au,
Yes.
and ole ma ua o foloina.
Yeah.
Some people are now singing it ma. You don't swallow stones.
Yes.
You swallow your pride.
That's right.
So that's just two of the lines. But that's another very famous song of hers. But this was done because her song Farewell Samoa was sung by Mavis Rivers. And look how young the Arnold sisters look here.
Those are the
In a
ancestors.
very famous concert that she did in New Zealand in the 1970s called Mavis and Friends.
Yes.
And there's also, we've got Pussy Urale. But this photo down here, 20th Century Fox did a movie about American Samoa this year.
Soccer team.
And they wanted to run a minute of Savalivali.
Yeah.
And even though it's out of copyright, it's more than 25 years since my mother passed.
Yes.
They still wanted me to sign. So that's me signing my permission.
Wow.
That's me signing my permission.
20th Century Fox.
So 20th Century Fox could use Savalivali in their movie.
Wow.
And that movie, I think, is due to come out shortly.
That's amazing.
But it is very important for the Samoan Language Week because of the fact that they use it now in primary schools to teach the language.
We all grew up with this one.
Yeah,
We all-
Savalivali.
so many generations of New Zealanders have gone with it.
So before we wrap things up, I just wanted to make sure that we were able to mention all the different celebrities that you've been able to meet throughout the years. You met her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth. You also met with Rosita Vai, who happens to be the first Samoan winner of the New Zealand Idol. And you, as you mentioned before, you represented the Samoa's delegation to Taulatala's David Tua's heavyweight challenge in Las Vegas, Nevada. But one thing you didn't mention is the fact that you actually hosted The Rock when he visited Samoa. And can you tell us just as we kind of like wrap things up?
Well, that picture is also in my chapter on the Rock. It's a very significant picture because Rock is kneeling before Malietoa.
Yes.
And he's getting blessed with his Seuli title. And I think the cultural significance of this, so he's a superstar now. Nobody, I mean, he's the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
Yes.
And he's kneeling before his Samoan chief getting a title.
Yes.
And I think it's so significant. And I think when people overseas see this,
Yes.
they'll think, is that the same superstar that comes in all these movies? And
Yeah.
so he had just done a movie called Walking Tall.
Right.
And those people who know Rock's movies, it's a tough movie about a guy in the army who comes back and his town's been taken over by this guy. And he had the private jet, and he was allowed 3 days off. So he decided he wanted to find his roots. So I hosted him in Samoa. I met him at the airport. I hosted him. I got him his title with Malietoa. And he hosted a function. We raised 30,000 for the nuns.
Yes.
But he loved it. He went back to his villages, which was Saleaumua and Potasi.
Yes.
Those are where his roots are.
Yeah.
So he really came to terms with the fact that he's Samoan. And he came as Rock, and he left as Seuli Rock.
Right.
So you'll see there him kneeling before Malietoa,
Yes.
and you'll see there how happy he was. He's got his arms around me and Seuli Moala.
Yes.
But Malietoa decided on the Sayuli title for him.
Wow.
Most of the people that I take to Malietoa for a title, he decides in the last minute. So you'll say Papali'i, or you'll say Sayuli, or you'll say Awi Matangi. It's funny because I have very good friends, Pali, Tele, Tihati, and Shah. Because Shah is the talkative one in the family, he decided Awi Matangi for Shah, the talking chief title of the Malietoa family, Awi Matangi. But he always would decide what to do in the last minute. But what was nice about this is Rock is obviously so impressed, and he's showing his filial gratitude to his chief.
That's right.
The Matai who just bestowed him a title. And I just think it's so significant. But it's been an honor to serve the people of Samoa. I mean, I was president in office of the ACP. I was in Brussels for a long time.
Yes.
So it's quite a, I was chairman of the AIDS Commission. It was very funny. I fought against stigma. I just did not like stigma. I don't mind who the background of the person is, but if they had AIDS, and if you remember at the early days, there was tremendous stigma against people who suffered from it, from the disease. So I was I was champion for them, and I've done a lot of things that I'm very proud of that are maybe off the beaten track a little bit, but they're all in that book.
Thank you very much, Misa, for being able to share all of these stories with us. And I just wanted to remind everyone that the purpose of this conversation that we're having today is all about this book. And you can find all of these stories in this book if you purchase this book. Where can we find the book again?
The Samoa Stationery and Books, 141 Beta Road at the Samoa Complex.
At the Samoa
It's
Complex.
a beautiful store. It's got a lot of beautiful stuff in there, as well as books.
Okay. And so what we're going to do is we are going to continue this conversation next week. And we're going to conclude right here. And we'll get back to allow you to hear more of the stories that Afionga Misa has inside his book. We will be showing the part 2 at 6 o'clock in the evening on Friday, which will be the day after, tomorrow, basically, when you guys see this. So if you get a chance, please, and you're interested in seeing the rest of this conversation, you can catch it at 6 o'clock p.m. on Friday, Channel 36, APNA TV.